Welcome to another episode of This Fucking Guy, the series where we pick out one fucking guy who's making America worse and discuss the reasons they suck. I'm Erin Ryan, host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco, the other host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
Alyssa, we're wrapping up year one of This Fucking Guy by taking a little bit of a break from straight politics because, frankly, that shit's exhausting and I'm going to need to save my strength for 2025.
Girl, same. So we're closing out the year instead with someone who always seems to be around, but especially in December as the holidays approach. He's the reason those packages keep showing up at your house. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
And no, it's not Santa Claus. Although with his North Pole labor practices and elf union busting, the big guy's on thin ice. No, today we're talking about Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, second richest person on the planet with a net worth of around $240 billion. I'd argue that he's the platonic ideal of the modern supervillain.
Oh, bold stance, Erin. I think a lot of people would say it's former This Fucking Guy subject Elon Musk, but you're right. Jeff is the uber shirky.
When it comes to the race for the world's preeminent comic book nemesis, Elon's trying too hard. Bezos makes it look like it comes naturally to him. Between Jeff Bezos' exploitative labor practices on a nearly unimaginable scale, pathological hoarding of resources, unquenchable lust to stamp out competition, and unbridled divorced guy energy so cringe it could single-handedly power a rocket ship to the moon, it's rare to find a man who has taken so much from so many and yet given so little in return.
As we know, all the best supervillains give off divorced guy energy, but they also have interesting backstories, peppered with details that make you stop and say, wait, what? Like Vladimir Putin or Dr. Evil.
So let's start with the beginning. Jeff Bezos was born Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen on January 12th, 1964, to teenaged parents named Ted and Jackie in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I'm always so shocked when someone uncool comes from New Mexico.
I know, it's a chill state. Well, Jeff's mom was a high school student and his dad was an aspiring unicyclist with big circus dreams and a drinking problem. That is 100% real.
Drinking and unicycling, two activities that famously do not go well together.
No, Jeff's parents were shotgun married in Mexico, but their marriage didn't last long. The Bristol Palin and Levi Johnston of Albuquerque, if you will, minus the stint in the gorilla suit on Dancing with the Stars. So Jeff's parents broke up not long after Jeff was born, and his dad was so not in the picture that years later, when some journalists tracked him down, Ted Jorgensen had no idea that his son was the founder of Amazon.
Sounds like little Jeffrey Jorgensen had the deck stacked against him, and Big Dad Jorgensen is probably thinking about what a bad bet it was to skip out on child support payments when your son grows up to be one of the richest men on the planet.
I know. Think of all the high-end unicycles your billionaire son could have bought you, Mr. Jorgensen. But don't feel too bad for little Jeff Jorgensen. His maternal grandparents were well off. He spent a lot of time as a kid on their big ranch in Texas, doing ranch things like castrating bulls and going on Airstream caravan vacations.
Despite the fact his dad wasn't around, Jeff had a loving and nurturing childhood, especially after Miguel Mike Bezos entered the picture. Miguel emigrated to the U.S. from Cuba knowing only one word in English, hamburger, but eventually got his degree in engineering and made a nice little life for himself. Mike and Jackie met when Jeff was a little kid. They fell in love, they got married, and Mike adopted Jeff, and eventually the family moved to Miami, where Jeff grew up comfortably upper middle class. Mike was so all in on being Jeff's dad that Jeff Bezos didn't know that Mike Bezos wasn't his biological father until he was either 8 or 10 years old.
Jeff was always a huge fucking dork. A perfectly respectable vocation. We love dorks around here, so long as the dork doesn't also have the sort of megalomaniacal personality disorder that eventually leads to an insatiable lust to hoard wealth.
How big of a dork was he?
In high school, Jeff and a girlfriend started a 10-day summer camp for kids that cost $600 and required kids to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. In addition to an obsession with the Lord of the Rings, Bezos is a big-time Trekkie. Fun fact about Jeff Bezos that I'm afraid humanizes him a little bit. He appeared in a full face of makeup and prosthetics for the 2016 Star Trek film Star Trek Beyond. He has one speaking line.
Speak normally.
If only he'd stuck to throwing his weight around with studio execs to get little cameos in his favorite IP. As we're all painfully aware by now, there's something extra dangerous about a power-hungry dork with a chip on his shoulder. And we were better off as a society during the Cold War between the jocks and the dorks, when the truly dangerous dweebs were kept in check by the jocks, and the jocks had no access to the dorks to pull off their meat-headed evil plans.
Exactly. Bring back the Cold War.
Jeff graduated first in his high school class and, like many terrible people, attended Princeton University, where he studied engineering and probably learned some mean chants about Cornell.
After he graduated, he worked in finance in New York City, becoming the youngest ever senior vice president of D.E. Shaw and Company.
When Jeff Bezos was 27 years old, he decided it was time for him to wife up. He approached this task in the creepiest way possible by adapting business terms to dating.
I can't imagine anything less sexy. And the algorithm just sent me a TikTok of a shirtless RFK Jr. covered in bugs, Erin.
Oh, don't worry, Alyssa. There are much less sexy things coming later. So in business, it's good practice to maximize something called deal flow. And so in Jeff's brain, pulsating with desire, he decided that the way for him to increase his dating success was to increase something he called woman flow.
He sounded divorced before he was even married.
And shockingly, it didn't work. Jeff ended up meeting his future wife, Mackenzie, at work. She worked in the office next to him. She would later tell a journalist that she fell in love with his laugh.
Okay. That's really good.
I feel like that's the sound you hear, like, as you are about to pass out in an Amazon warehouse.
Shit. But hey, Mackenzie, the heart wants what it wants. You don't even want to know what I was attracted to when I was living in New York City in my 20s.
The pair of lovebirds got engaged and married after less than a year. And from there, they made their way from the high finance of the East toward the promise of the West, armed with a big idea and a desire to pay as little in taxes as possible.
And now we've arrived at the reason we're talking about this fucking guy in the first place, because it's certainly not his fashion sense. Amazon.
So as we mentioned, in the 90s, a young but already balding Jeff Bezos thrived at a company called D.E. Shaw, also known as Desco. It was an ultra-competitive, highly secretive work environment with an intense recruitment process, and Bezos would later take all three of these elements to his own company.
It was around this time that Bezos started building his own mythology as a workaholic of the highest order. He kept a sleeping bag in his office, which a colleague called as much a prop as it was actually useful.
We get it, Jeff. You love to work so much that you want everyone to know you could sleep in your office if you needed to. If you love work so much, then why don't you marry it? Oh no, maybe that's actually the next frontier of corporate personhood. Who do we think would marry a corporation? Mitt Romney? Maybe in the celestial kingdom.
Anyways, when the internet was ascendant in 1994, Desco's CEO David Shaw appointed Bezos to learn how to exploit the newfound technology for the company's gain, and the two began bouncing around possibilities for new business ventures.
They discussed several ideas, like an email service and an online stock trading service, but they kept coming back to one particular concept that they called the everything store. The idea was relatively simple: an online retailer that served as the intermediary between customers and manufacturers and sold, well, everything. In other words, a mega middleman.
After some deliberation, Bezos and his new wife Mackenzie took his Wall Street earnings, Rolodex, and his rich white guy confidence across the country to Seattle and decided to roll the dice on the everything store idea. And so on July 5th, 1994, Amazon was born, and the startup began filling orders the following year.
The couple beta tested a couple of truly bad names before they settled on the Amazon branding we know and begrudgingly accept. Jeff bandied about the name Make It So, which was a Star Trek reference, but was talked out of that one to the relief of Trekkies everywhere. The company's initial name was Cadabra, as in abracadabra, until a bunch of people pointed out how much cadabra sounds like cadaver, especially over the phone. I simply would not be shocked if it turned out that Bezos was, on top of everything else, a close-up magic dweeb.
I could see it. Also, cadaver actually might have been a more appropriate name for the company, all things considered.
As my fellow 90s kids will remember, Amazon started out as an online bookseller, but old Jeff didn't choose books because he was a lover of literature. Like all of Jeff's decisions, this was purely financial.
Of all the categories of things a person could buy, there are more items in the category of books than any other by a lot. At any given time, there are about 3 million books in print worldwide, which is obviously far more than any brick and mortar store could ever keep on the shelves.
Why does it feel like 1 million of those books are James Patterson paperbacks at the airport?
Absolutely. Less than 2 months into the business, Amazon was delivering books in all 50 states, and they were off to the races.
Bezos had read the autobiography of Walmart founder Sam Walton multiple times. Why? What a huge red flag. He copy-pasted many of Walmart's unsavory business tactics for use at Amazon. From Walmart's example, Bezos knew that the way to win over customers was teaching them to put price and convenience above all other considerations.
AKA, start with the assumption that people, if given the choice, would rather do less to get products and services they want. Walmart also set a great precedent for Bezos of underpaying and overworking one's employees, but we'll get to that later.
Like Walmart, Amazon crushed competitors by pricing items so low that the company actually lost money, knowing small businesses in particular couldn't absorb those kinds of hits as long as Amazon could, until eventually the small business would have to shut its doors.
Bezos was lifting so studiously from Walmart's playbook that he even started poaching Walmart executives after Amazon's initial public offering in 1997.
I mean, who wouldn't want to move from Arkansas to Seattle?
Truly.
I certainly would. Amazon quickly branched out into CDs and DVDs and began acquiring other companies. Damn, I didn't think this episode would make me so nostalgic for physical media. I need to hold a Tori Amos Boys for Pele CD right now.
Such a good CD. This commitment to always having the lowest price plus nonstop expansion meant Amazon didn't turn its first profit until 2001 and did not have a full year of profitability until 2003.
Here's the thing I don't understand. The company is worth billions.
Yes.
And every time I pick up the paper, each year it loses more money than it lost the year before. The company's never made a profit.
That's right.
It's amazing. You know, we lost $12 million last year and we're doing great.
Well, there are a whole series of Doonesbury cartoons about this. This is not a new phenomenon. We are a famously unprofitable company,
Right.
and we are investing in the future. It's not, which isn't unusual. Companies have done this before. What's a little surprising about Amazon.com is the scale to which we're doing it. We're doing it in a big way.
I see. So you just keep reinvesting.
We're reinvesting.
Now,
Nobody has ever laughed harder at Jay Leno. The 90s and early 2000s were a time when companies like Amazon were lauded for their growth-at-all-cost practices, creating a corporate monopoly, tax avoidance, union busting, OSHA violations, who cares? Move fast and break stuff. It was all about that market share, baby.
And the company just kept expanding. In 2000, Amazon Marketplace launched with third-party sellers able to sell directly to Amazon customers, with Amazon naturally taking a handsome cut.
That same year, the company inked a deal with toy emporium Toys R Us to be their exclusive online retailer. Then Amazon used Toys R Us's own internal data against them to extract big fees from the company, while also squeezing them out of the market entirely. And that's part of the reason that Toys R Us became Toys Were Us.
R.I.P. Amazon kept on with its winning strategy, losing huge amounts of money in the short term to get customers continually coming back to the trough in the long term.
To that end, the company unveiled Amazon Prime in 2005, a yearly subscription service that offered free 2-day shipping on all orders for just $79 per year. Like most Amazon features to reduce friction for shoppers, this one had no clear route to breaking even. But as Bloomberg reporter Brad Stone wrote in his 2013 book, The Everything Store, Jeff Bezos and the Age of Amazon, the service turned customers into Amazon addicts who gorged on the almost instant gratification of having purchases reliably appear 2 days after they ordered them.
The entire first decade of Amazon was about building a customer base and undercutting the competition. But the company wasn't limiting its sledgehammer tactics to brick-and-mortar stores. It also went on a killing spree of other online retailers.
In 2009, Amazon approached Quidsy, the fast-growing parent company of several profitable online stores like Diapers.com, which allowed new parents to easily schedule diaper deliveries, and made an offer to acquire the company. Quidsy declined. Almost immediately, Amazon slashed its diaper prices by some 30% and launched Amazon Mom, which gave customers a year's worth of Prime shipping for free and even steeper discounts on diapers.
Amazon was on track to lose an estimated $100 million in just 3 months from this gambit.
Quidsy saw the writing on the wall and ultimately sold Amazon under extreme pressure in 2010. You might be thinking to yourself, hey, Amazon is just being a competitive business by offering the lowest prices. And low prices are better for consumers. Amazon, good, actually. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it works. Once a company like Amazon lowers its prices below the cost of production and succeeds in killing its competitors, wouldn't you know it, they raise those prices right back up, even higher than before, because now they control the market. It even has a name, predatory pricing.
All of this is documented in a sweeping 2017 Yale Law Review article called Amazon's Antitrust Paradox, which was written by a then little-known law student named Lena Khan. This paper went viral in wonky policy circles and put Khan on the map.
As we lay out in our complaint, Amazon is now able to get away with harming its customers. So just to give you a few examples.
Yes.
Over the last few years, they've littered their search results page with junk ads. They've also been steadily hiking the fees that small businesses have to pay to sell through Amazon. And so now some small businesses have to pay $1 out of every $2 to Amazon. It's basically a 50% monopoly tax.
The New York Times said Khan had reframed, quote, decades of monopoly law. 4 years later, President Joe Biden announced that he was nominating her to head the Federal Trade Commission. And Amazon executives freaked the fuck out. Lena, if you're watching this, girl, we love you.
Amazon's model is one we've seen become the industry standard in Silicon Valley. Take on mountains of debt, cornering the market, and getting users hooked on a no-cost or extremely cheap product or service, and then hope it turns into profitability. It's like in a casino where your first bet is free, or a drug dealer who gives you your first hit on the house.
Right. And from the beginning, Bezos was unapologetic about Amazon's strategy to reinvest any profits into growth and acquisitions rather than, say, paying its employees better wages for their backbreaking labor.
By now, as we sit here at the end of 2024, Amazon employee conditions, particularly those for warehouse workers, need little introduction.
This was, again, the Walmart model of running one's corporation with frugality, which is a fun way of saying underpaying the people who create your profits and subjecting them to terrible working conditions. But rest assured, they continued to spare no expense in pursuit of market dominance.
Again, Brad Stone writes in The Everything Store, some Amazon employees advance the theory that Bezos lacks a certain degree of empathy, and that as a result, he treats workers like expendable resources without taking into account their contributions to the company.
A billionaire who lacks empathy and treats human beings as disposable? Well, now we've heard it all.
It should come as no surprise that Bezos and the Amazon executives he shepherded had to be dragged kicking and screaming to implement the most basic workplace safety standards.
Amazon executives skipped out on air conditioning for facilities in certain regions like the Midwest, believing it to be an unnecessary expense. Anyone from the Midwest knows that it gets hotter than the fourth quarter jockstrap of a Nebraska defensive lineman in summer. So on not uncommon 100-degree plus days, Amazon workers were given only an extra 5 minutes on their breaks and some free Gatorade. Plus, the company installed fans to blow the hot air around. How generous.
A 2011 expose in the Allentown, Pennsylvania newspaper Morning Call detailed similarly brutal conditions during that summer's heat wave. In Amazon's 2 fulfillment centers in the Lehigh Valley, 15 workers suffered from heat-related illness and had to be taken to local hospitals. An emergency room doctor even called federal regulators to report the dangerous conditions.
Oh my God. The most ghoulish detail in the report noted that Amazon paid a private ambulance company to be on standby during the heat wave because I guess it was cheaper than installing air conditioning. The company made minor changes in response to the public outcry, but the problems persisted. This fucking guy is brought to you by Lumen. I want to introduce you to an amazing tool that helps increase energy levels and feel better in your body. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. My husband is a huge fan of Lumen. He starts each morning with a quick check of his metabolism on the device, and within seconds, he gets a tailored nutrition plan for the day. He's been using it before and after workouts to get real-time insights on how his metabolism is firing, and it's helped him determine what his body needs to get closer to reaching his goals. He's definitely inspiring me to try it when I am done feeding a baby with my body. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/guy to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/guy for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Just last year, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, issued citations against 6 Amazon warehouses over unsafe working conditions, ergonomic hazards, and failure to report injuries.
Many Amazon staffers say the demand for greater speed is the leading factor harming warehouse workers.
11 seconds was the goal.
Is that hard to meet?
Yeah. I had a full shift of all heavy items. I got injured. I pulled my back out.
We've looked at how we can get packages to the customer in a day, but we haven't figured out how we can get packages to the customer in a day without hurting people.
10 hours, only 2 breaks. Who get doctored for going to the bathroom? Who get doctored for going to get water?
25,000 serious injuries a year, 100% turnover in these warehouses. What price is America willing to pay to get 1-day delivery, 2-day delivery?
Sad.
According to OSHA's 2023 report, Amazon warehouse workers are injured more than twice as often as the company's competitors. In the case of one warehouse, it was 5 times as often. Even those numbers might be on the low side, as reports have detailed a culture of fear among Amazon employees about reporting workplace injuries.
The high number of injuries is attributable to the almost inhuman productivity quotas, like inspecting 30 packages per minute, and the company's reluctance or even outright refusal to make necessary workplace safety modifications.
OSHA isn't the only federal agency involved. Amazon also continues to be under scrutiny from the Department of Justice for workplace safety violations and the National Labor Relations Board for union-busting activities.
Yeah, unions don't tend to like when workers are regularly being carted off their jobs in ambulances.
So far, of the more than 110 Amazon warehouses in the U.S., only one has successfully unionized. A fulfillment center in Staten Island, New York, voted to unionize in 2022, but the union has still been unable to secure a contract over 2 years later as Amazon keeps contesting the election and appealing the vote with the NLRB.
Worse still, a 2021 New York Times investigation found that Amazon had been systematically stiffing its workers on their paychecks. The Times alleged that according to confidential reports, Amazon had been shortchanging new parents, patients dealing with medical crises, and other vulnerable workers on leave for at least a year and a half, all while the company experienced record profits.
And Amazon has such an enormous market share in basically every retail industry that the way it exploits its workers has a ripple effect. Yet another New York Times investigation found that other retailers like Verizon began exploiting their warehouse workers too, in a rush to compete with the e-commerce giant.
Walmart paved the way for Amazon, which in turn paved the way for more recent hyper-capitalist online retailers like Shein and Temu. And now many of the world's most profitable corporations have employees they pay meager wages and forced to endure terrible working conditions in order to pump out copious amounts of poor quality slop products at record speed. These companies contribute literal tons of trash to landfills each day just so consumers can get goods they mostly don't need at rock-bottom prices.
The nonprofit Oceana found that Amazon generated 600 million pounds of plastic packaging waste in 2020 and 709 million pounds in 2021. That's so much trash, and that's just the packaging. All this sounds pretty bad, right? Well, Amazon has not wrought this much destruction in the name of 2-day shipping simply because of inherent corporate evil, though we'd be happy to make that argument another time. But because for most of the company's history, governments have seemed either unable or altogether uninterested in reining them in.
The company might not pay for air conditioning in its warehouses, but it sure doesn't skimp on its lobbying budget, which currently sits at over $22 million annually.
Amazon is the second highest corporate spender in Washington and, as such, has been eye-poppingly effective at fending off all manner of privacy protections, antitrust issues, internet regulation, stricter labor laws, and greater worker protections. As of 2024, the $2 trillion company pays shockingly little in federal income taxes thanks to loopholes in part obtained by those lobbyists. At the same time, companies like Amazon benefit from employees they woefully underpay being able to access government-sponsored healthcare and other safety net programs like SNAP. So in a way, Bezos is one of history's most profitable welfare queens. In 2018, for example, Amazon made $11.2 billion and paid, you guessed it, or maybe you didn't, $0 in federal income taxes. I made just a little less than $11.2 billion that year, and I still had to pay my taxes.
In 2013, Bezos purchased the Washington Post from the Graham family for $250 million, which, if you're Jeff Bezos, is the amount of money you find in the pockets of a winter coat you haven't worn for a while.
Now, to Jeff Bezos' credit, which is not a preface we find ourselves using very often over here at this fucking guy, in his decade of ownership of the Post, he seemingly has not interfered with any unflattering reporting on Amazon. In fact, the Washington Post had a number of scathing articles about Amazon corporate practices that we used as research for this very video.
But his non-interference at the Post ended in October when he stopped the paper's editorial board from endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. Would that have had anything to do with the billions of dollars in government contracts held by Bezos' businesses that could be jeopardized in a retaliation-fueled Donald Trump presidency? We would never speculate on such things. It is far too gauche.
Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos, through all of this, were, according to their mega-rich neighbors in a Seattle suburb, totally regular mega-rich people who seemed to really like each other and were involved and engaged parents to their 4 children who, by all accounts, grew up to be normal and not total shitheads.
So we have to hand it to the Bezos family there. At least they didn't populate the world with a bunch of Don Juniors.
In the decade or so after purchasing the Washington Post, Bezos has been slowly but surely transforming physically from nerdy tech guy to midlife crisis divorce guy. He went from a guy who looked a little like a winsome Sunday school puppeteer to a guy who looked like a veiny penis. He shaved his head and got some biceps and started wearing tight t-shirts. He went from being a malignant nerd to a malignant douchebag. He was Roganing.
Roganing?
You know, like Joe Rogan, filling up with fluids and supplements, skin tinged with magenta of excellence and creatine.
Got it. Copy that. Got it.
So suddenly, in early 2019, after 25 years of marriage, extra medium t-shirt enthusiast Jeff Bezos tweeted out a very PR-approved sounding divorce announcement about him and Mackenzie. It read in part, "As our family and close friends know, after a long period of loving exploration and trial separation, we've decided to divorce and continue our shared lives as friends." It seemed to come out of nowhere, but then things got weird. And yes, even weirder than whatever he meant by the phrase loving exploration.
Oh, goodness. Soon after, the National Enquirer published 11 pages of text messages between Bezos and a married Los Angeles TV personality named Lauren Sanchez, with whom Bezos had been romantically involved for almost a year. Whoever was in charge of the Bezos family PR was a bit shifty with the timelines of the separation and divorce, and the implication by the Enquirer's expose was that Bezos and Sanchez had been carrying on while he was still very much married.
What's interesting about the story is the mystery of how the National Enquirer got a hold of those texts.
To be fair, Jeff Bezos' sex are incredibly cringe, but everybody's sex are cringy, which is why I don't recommend sexting anybody for any reason.
That's right. The only person you should be sexting is God. Anyway, at first there was speculation that Lauren Sanchez's Trumpy-ass brother had supplied the Enquirer with the sex. But it turns out the Enquirer had approached the brother with the sex in hand already to verify their authenticity. So they didn't originate with Lauren at all, apparently. It appeared that the Enquirer, or somebody supplying the Enquirer with information, had hacked Jeff Bezos' phone. And given Enquirer publisher David Pecker's closeness to Donald Trump, questions swirled about whether Trump's longstanding rivalry or perhaps jealousy of Bezos could have had something to do with the hack. But despite some juicy circumstantial evidence, Trump was once again harder to nail down than a Jell-O jiggler.
Jell-O jiggler? I literally haven't thought of a Jell-O jiggler since the late 1990s. Erin, you just unlocked a memory. Isn't it bizarre that we once lived in an era when children were served gingerbread men-shaped Jell-O because Bill Cosby told our moms it was a good idea? I feel like I am having a stroke.
I'm sorry, I do too. But dated similes aside, the reason the slimy antics of the National Enquirer leaking Bezos' amorous text to his then maybe mistress matters is that if you're a tech billionaire who runs a company that provides things like cloud computing, data storage, and online shopping, it doesn't really look good for your ability to protect the data of your customers if you can't even protect your own data from an embarrassing leak. If Jeff Bezos' shirtless selfies aren't safe, then none of us are.
One very fun thing about the Bezos divorce is that Mackenzie and Jeff did not have a prenup, and they lived in a community property state, which meant that Mackenzie was entitled to half of the assets acquired as a couple during their marriage. Instead, she agreed to walk away with 25% of Jeff's Amazon shares, but even that amount of money turned her into an instant billionaire many, many times over. The second that the divorce was finalized, Mackenzie Bezos changed her last name to Scott and became one of the richest women in the world. And then she got to winning the divorce.
That's right. Mackenzie Scott had played a big role in Amazon's early days, but now that she and Jeff were through, she wanted to unload her money ASAP. She got started right away, giving away billions of dollars and flitting around from organization to organization, dropping giant surprise donations on causes that are important to her, like some kind of reverse leprechaun. As of September 2024, she's given away more than $17 billion and is pledged to give away most of the rest of it in her lifetime.
She's like a real-life, divorced fairy godmother and perhaps the only benevolent billionaire.
Maybe. But let's go back to our evil billionaire, Jeff. He and Lauren Sanchez got engaged in 2023 and celebrated by sitting for one of the most embarrassing Annie Leibovitz photo shoots that I have ever seen. Curse the pages of Vogue. It takes place on Bezos' ranch. Just take a look. Words could not express how much Bezos is not pulling off a cowboy hat, despite the fact that he does have bull castrating bona fides from his time growing up on his grandparents' ranch.
Some people just scream inside boy.
Post-divorce, Jeff Bezos' douchebaggery kept accelerating, and so it should come as no surprise to anybody that after he and Mackenzie's divorce was finalized, he purchased a 417-foot super yacht that he named the Koru, which is surprisingly not a word from the Star Trek or J.R.R. Tolkien universes. In fact, it's a Maori word for new beginnings. The bust on the front of the boat is modeled after his future second wife, Lauren Sanchez, naturally.
Erin, the only person who should have their bust on the front of a ship is Celine Dion. It is as simple as that.
100%. This super yacht is so big and obnoxious that it was too big to leave the Dutch shipyard where it was built without dismantling a local historical bridge.
Well, that feels like a metaphor.
So despite the fact that Bezos' team pinky promised to build the bridge back exactly the way they found it after they dismantled it to let his super yacht pass through, local citizens were like, hell the fuck no. And the boat needed to be towed the long way around in the dead of night.
The sail of shame.
Another check on the billionaire supervillain list, desire to colonize space.
Always.
It's always space with these fucking guys. Bezos had made it no secret that he's dreamed of becoming an astronaut ever since he was a little boy. And thanks to his billions, he was able to pretend to be one for a few minutes at great personal expense in 2021 when his company Blue Origin sent him and a few passengers far enough into the atmosphere that they experienced weightlessness for a few minutes.
After the team landed, everybody congratulated themselves like they'd really done something. Look, good for you. You went up so high in the air, but how about maybe just clearing some teachers' Amazon wish lists too, my brother?
Yeah, Bezos has said a lot of very stupid things about space, like he wants to colonize it with trillions of people, and this quote, "We're going to build a road to space." So our kids and their kids can build the future. We need to do that to solve the problems here on Earth. I don't know, Jeff. Sounds like we have to solve the problems on Earth, especially because you personally keep creating so many of Earth's problems. Also, Alyssa, fun fact, he wants to turn the Earth into like an intergalactic park. He wants all the people off and then turn it into like a national park we can all visit.
Oh, okay. That works. That works. Yeah, but what's the real reason he wants to go to space? Nobody like Jeff Bezos ever does anything for anybody that doesn't lead to him getting more profit or feeling like a big shot.
So Bezos buried the lead there, but I suspect that his true motivations are that Bezos and other space billionaires don't really care about the childlike wonder of experiencing outer space. They just want to be the first tycoons to master private spaceflight so they can exploit whatever resources are available in space. Minerals, weapons testing, lair construction, maybe. I mean, what supervillain wouldn't want to live inside an asteroid, am I right? Space is like international waters for people who are bored with their super yachts.
One more thing about Jeff Bezos that elevates him to the top of the supervillain power rankings, his desire to live forever.
Oh, yes. Bezos, like many other ultra-wealthy crones, cares deeply about prolonging his life. Wealth and status are famously not compatible with the afterlife, so it makes sense that a billionaire might panic about the fact that if there is a God who cares about humanity, he's probably got some splaining to do when he gets to heaven. I'm imagining Jeff asking a friend, even if there's nothing, do you think there's like a first-class section of nothing?
Bezos invested millions into a company known as Altos Labs, which promised to reverse cellular aging in animals.
In totally unrelated news, Jeff Bezos' lazy eye is apparently associated with aging.
Imagine having enough money to run a small country or feed every school child in America, but instead deciding to spend it on fixing your own lazy eye.
We don't know that that's why Jeff Bezos is so interested in anti-aging technology, but we don't know it's not why Jeff Bezos is so interested in anti-aging technology. Maybe the people who hacked his phone and stole his sex would let us know whether or not he ever Googled how to grow hair back or bald how to fix or how to grow taller adult man. Look, I know I'm being mean here, but we literally live in a society where even conventionally attractive female celebrities are scrutinized within an inch of their lives. Women are told they look great for their age at 31. If a prominent female public figure looked like Jeff Bezos, she'd be dragged into the street and hoisted in the town square and possibly burned as a witch. At the very minimum, she'd never, ever allowed on Fox News.
The thing about Jeff Bezos is that he could fix a ton of problems with the money he has and still be richer than God, but he chooses not to. He could take a page from his ex-wife's book and give life-changing donations to charities that make the world a safer, happier, and more beautiful place. He could be a real-life Santa Claus, but instead he hoards wealth, flies to space, tries to disassemble old bridges so his yacht can get out of the harbor.
Alyssa, I just did some napkin math. In my brain. And in the hour or so we've been in this studio together, Jeff Bezos' net worth grew by almost $9 million. It's pretty gross. Okay, Alyssa, on a scale of 1 to 5 weasels, how many do you think go to our pal Jeff Bezos?
I'm going to give Jeff Bezos 4 weasels because he's exploiting people. He's getting rich off of them. He's cheap. He is not sharing anything. And when given the opportunity, look at what his wife does with 25% of the Amazon stocks.
I'm going to go ahead and give him 5 because I think that the amount of human suffering he has caused in the pursuit of obscene amounts of wealth is like unconscionable. And the amount of pollution that he has caused is unconscionable. And I think it's even more insidious because he has tried to do some like surface level good guy things. But just because he's not doing the worst thing he possibly could do doesn't mean that he's in any way a good or redeemable person. All right. One final thought, Alyssa. I want you to appreciate the fact that there are many details of Jeff Bezos' life that fit perfectly into the lyrics of Billy Joel's Piano Man, and I did not sing any of the details in the form of Piano Man, and it was really hard for me.
His dad was a drunk unicyclist. His mother a teen with a dream. He castrated bulls on his grandpa's ranch. He never liked music that much. I went a little tone deaf at the end, but I don't think he could do better. Oh my God, you are right.
Yes. I'm going to have Jeff Bezos' Piano Man in my head.
Maybe we could do He Did Start the Fire by Billy Joel.
Yeah. Weird Al, if you're listening.
Okay, that's it for this episode of This Fucking Guy. If you like what you've seen, please like and subscribe. And if there are any fucking guys you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please leave a comment. See you next time.